change the world. On we go.
Hello, beautiful bookish family. Welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name's Steph. Today is a book review for part of the book tour for the adult thriller Where I Left Her by Amber Garza. I was sent this book by Harper Collins Harlequin Publishing as part of their blogger program in exchange for an honest review in the time of the book tour. Thank you so much, Harlequin, for sending me this book. I'm very excited to give you a spoiler-free review of this adult thriller. A brief synopsis of the story is basically that we're following a mother named Whitney, and she's very much a helicopter mom, but she's having some troubles with her teenage daughter, Amelia, who is just kind of what it seems like is going through normal teenage things, being rebellious, wanting to be on the phone all the time, thinking that their parents are lame, all that stuff. And Whitney's getting really tired. So if you're a parent or if you've dealt with teenagers, you know that there are just some times where it can be really exhausting to be arguing with a teenager all the time who's just kind of going through angst and growing pains and just part of life. So one day when her daughter is invited to sleep over at her friend's house, who, keep in mind, this friend has come over to the house before, so it's not like a new friend that the mother doesn't know, but Whitney has not actually met the parents, and usually Whitney would do the right thing, which is before your kid goes over to their friend's house, you meet the parents, you get to know the family a little bit, you don't want them just staying at a random stranger's house. But her daughter's always telling her how lame it is, that she has to drop her off and do all this extraness. Her daughter's about to be, old enough to get a driver's license, so she's like, okay, this one time I just don't feel like arguing. My daughter finally is talking to me a little bit. It's been months of just really big growing pains in our relationship. So I know this friend already. I'll just drop her off at the door. I won't come up inside. I'll just drop her off, drive away. So the mom does that. Whitney drops her off at her friend's house. She sees the friend open the door. She sees her daughter wave and go inside, goes home and just enjoys her time as a parent should when their kids aren't home, take some you time, some adult time. In her case, that's just watching a movie that she wanted to watch and eating some ice cream. Then the next morning she goes to pick up her daughter, and the older couple that opens the door is not the family of the daughter who was the friend who lived there. So when she says, "I'm here to pick up my daughter," they're going, "What are you talking about? No kid lives here." So now Whitney is freaking out, and that is a great setup. I was so excited when I heard the synopsis because I was like, oh my gosh, what would you do in that situation? What would you do if you dropped your kid off at a friend's house, you go to pick them up, and when you get there, people are saying, "What are you talking about? You never dropped a kid off. There's never been a kid here. We're a single couple." I would be freaking out. Which also means that she doesn't really have much evidence to show the police when the police are called, because this is verbal communication between her and her daughter. There's no text messages, nothing like that. I will say that I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was an enjoyable thriller. I did enjoy the plot twist at the end. However, I don't know that it's going to be for everyone, so I would suggest this to anyone who is fans of reading thriller books, who enjoys thriller stories about parenthood. I am very much interested in thriller stories about parenthood, so that was enjoyable to me. However, there were some things along the way that worked and didn't work, and that's still okay. It's still a decent book in my opinion. So I'm gonna give you the pros and cons in a spoiler-free context. By the way, this is my first time actually sitting down and doing a solid, regular sit down in front of the camera book review, independent single book review, so this is exciting new territory for me. It's like a booktube staple to sit down and just talk about reviewing a book, and I don't do that regularly, so this is fun and different. Anywho, some people may or may not find it believable that a helicopter mom would just mess up to this degree, but I actually thought it was kind of believable, because when you're a parent or when you work with children, it can get very tiring. It's very emotionally exhausting to be arguing and just trying to build relationships all the time. So that doesn't bother me at all. I will say that what was interesting is how there are so many unreliable characters in the story. What starts off as something that is very much like seemed pretty clean cut mystery. Someone's gone missing. Could it be a homicide? Was she kidnapped? Did she go to the wrong house? What is going on? But the way that the story was structured was also equally as interesting, because we get a lot of flashbacks, as in 3 kinds of points of view from the story. We have chapters where we are in Whitney's point of view. She's looking for her daughter, she's talking to the police, she's trying not to have a mental breakdown. But then there's also chapters where we're going either a few weeks back to understanding how her relationship with her daughter first began to become really strained, but then also situations where we're going years back where she's talking about her experience as a teenager and friendship. And at first it may seem like, what is the relationship here? Why are we going so far back? But in the end, all 3 of those timelines merge together and it makes sense. Now, as with most thrillers, there is a huge plot twist and things really pick up towards the last 20% of the book. And the very last few pages, when I got to that plot twist, I kind of had to close the book and like sit there for a little bit and think, was that plausible? Was that not plausible? Now, I did enjoy this plot twist, but I can see how it also might not make sense, and that is why I took a few points off of my rating for this, just because I think that the situation of how this plot twist happened would have quite a few more nuances to it. There are a couple things that are policies and things that I believe different systems have put into place to prevent these kinds of things from happening, or if these things did happen, to like thwart them from getting as far as they did, especially in the current age that we live in, given that the time period of this book is like very recent. It's not like something that happened like a long time ago, maybe in the 80s or the 70s, where like policies, there were loopholes in like all branches of everything. I'm trying to be as vague as possible without giving away the spoiler, but like, even though the plot twist is something that happened within the 21st century, I still think that it would have been caught, or that there are other things that are just like, I don't know that works for me. But I do think that Amber Garza does leave quite a few hints along the way to give you enough information where you can kind of figure out who to trust and who not to trust. My favorite portions of the book were the first 10%, where it was really fast paced and everything was happening, getting to know the characters, kid goes missing, mom's freaking out, cops are called, all that stuff. And then it kind of slows down a little bit for about the middle 70% of the book, where it's a little bit repetitive, even though the current timeline takes place within like a 30-hour time span of when the kid goes missing to like we figure out what happened. But it was a little bit slow, a little bit repetitive. I wouldn't have minded if it was stretched out a little bit farther, because this is a lot of stuff to happen in such a short time frame. Especially if people like get really exhausted from the high of extreme anxiety and fear over something happening. I know that in a lot of cases this could definitely cause insomnia, but there were a lot of subtle things that take a lot of brain power that were happening, and I'm like, girl, you need to eat. But then the last 20% of the book really picked up pace again. There are some serious trigger warnings here, and I know that for some people trigger warnings might be spoilery, but in this case I don't think that it is. So I am going to put a sign up above that says like trigger warning list, so if you want to fast forward through this you can, but I think that it's very important that people be aware before going into this book that there are some serious trigger warnings. In this we have sexual assault, domestic abuse, drug abuse, suicide, child abuse, death of a child, and mental health. Now that is a lot to fit into this, and I wasn't aware of this going in because I know that different thrillers take like different aspects, so this really relies heavy on those triggers as plot points. For some people that could be a turn off, that using a trigger or a trope as a plot point. However, the way that it was used in this, I really had to stop and think about it, and the fact that I had to close the book and actually assess what that meant to me, I think counts for something. At the same time, I can see how different events of the past, because of how these triggers happened or were incorporated, made sense to include it in this like triple timeline. So this may or may not work for you going in, depending on how you feel about those triggers. The only major thing that I really struggled with reading this was just the switching of the timelines. It felt a little bit clunky here and there in the beginning, but I think once you get used to that, it starts to make sense. So I really felt for Whitney for the longest time, because being a parent and not knowing what's happening to your kid is extremely frightening. I freak out just thinking about possibly like something going wrong on a field trip. I can't imagine if it was my own child. Like, I can't. That would freak me out. I would say definitely if you're a mom, that this book can be extremely triggering, but also that makes it more realistic and also very hard-hitting. All in all, I think it was a good time. There are lots of characters throughout the story where you're just kind of like, who can I trust? Could it be this person? But this event happened. How is the daughter related to this? How does being a teenager relate into this? Because sometimes teenagers just do dumb things, and no one's child is exempt of making dumb decisions. That's just part of growing up. You need to kind of sometimes touch the fire to realize that you shouldn't have touched the fire. That's a really bad analogy, but you know what I'm talking about. As we go through the story, you're kind of taking people off your list of suspects of like who could have aided in this, or what could Whitney have done to prevent this from happening, or what actually happened at that house. So I had fun trying to keep up and solving the mystery. Now, I will also say there are some conveniences in this story. Depending on how you feel about conveniences, for some people that doesn't matter, and conveniences are totally okay and expected, because thriller books or sometimes plot points need a convenience in order to develop the story. For other people, it may be too convenient. I'm one of those people that's like in the middle, where I don't mind one or two conveniences here or there, but there's a certain threshold of like how much convenience is too much convenience. So I can see how that might factor into some people's relationship with how they rate this book. So Where I Left Her by Amber Garza, it was published and released on August 24th. Thank you so much to Harper Collins for sending this to me. I look forward to reviewing more mystery thriller books in the future. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can get notifications whenever I post book reviews. I post videos every week. Catch you later. Bye!
What's it making, Mr. Wonka?